On the 1st of July 2020, Trackmania was released, a competitive Formula 1 racing game mixed with Hot Wheels elements like loops, wall rides, and jumps. In Trackmania, the objective is to set the fastest time you can on any track you play, so the game is basically made for speedrunning. With the game came 25 tracks to compete for world records on in the summer 2020 campaign. The summer campaign would last from the 1st of July until the 1st of October, where the leaderboards on all tracks would then be locked forever. So we effectively had 3 months to set the best times we could before they would be immortalized in the game. Going into the season, I had set my goal at achieving at least one world record, but I could never have anticipated what a long and winding journey it would be. This is how I got a dream world record in Trackmania. Just before we begin, we are getting so close to 100,000 subscribers on the channel, and I know that many of my viewers aren't subscribed. So if you like my videos, then please consider subscribing and help me reach that goal. It would really make my day. Thanks, and enjoy the video. My journey began on launch day, July 1st, where as soon as the game released, I immediately went into the campaign and started playing the tracks, looking for shortcuts. After playing for about an hour, I'd gone through most of the campaign tracks without finding much of anything. But then I got to track 19. Already in my first playthrough of 19, I noticed something peculiar, a potential shortcut in the start, and my interest was immediately piqued. Boys, do you see what are you looking at what I'm looking at here right now? Because I'm seeing a potential overfall down to the dirt. If it works, that would be very nice. Maybe there's a shortcut here. Because you can climb dirt walls, right? Oh, it's totally possible. It's totally possible. This is faster though. The shortcut idea did indeed work. Because of the way dirt roads in Trackmania curve upwards, you could simply climb over the border and drop down on the other side, skipping a turn and saving 1 to 2 seconds. But as we soon discovered, there was much more that went into setting a good time on 19. Let's have a look at the entire track. Following the start shortcut, the track continues through a tight zigzag section, where you have to make your way at full speed past an army of poles. Then you make your way up the ice road into a sharp 180-degree dirt turn. In this turn, we quickly realized we could use a trick called the bug slide. If you line up the car 90 degrees sideways and start drifting, the car can do a very sharp turn while maintaining a lot of speed. But bug sliding does not work while your car still has ice on the wheels, and since we just came from an ice uphill, we had to wait until the very moment the car gained normal grip before sliding. The timing had to be perfect or else you'd fly out of the track. After that, you get to the middle section. In the middle of 19, you drive over an engine off block, which as the name suggests, turns off your car's engine. The engine will stay off all the way until you cross the next checkpoint, and the car will just slowly roll down the hill and over the straight until it turns back on. Then the track ends just as it started, with another sharp 180-degree dirt turn. There were a lot of moving parts on track 19, but that was what made it so interesting to me. I ended up playing the track for about an hour on the first day, trying to nail down both the start shortcut and the bug slide in a single run. And finally, I had this attempt. A run where I executed both a solid wall climb and a decent bug slide. Ah, okay, it's the timing. I was too early most of the time. Boys, this is a pog and run, we could get it here. Keep the pace. And 5407. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a world record, the first of its kind, a shortcut world record. Very cool, very fun. My record, of course, wouldn't last. There were many parts of my run that could be refined, and over the next few days, Dark took it upon himself to go for a clean run on the map. first lowering the world record down to a 52.09, before improving it yet again down to a 51.94, over 2 seconds faster than my time. Dark had gotten most parts of the run clean. He had a much faster wall climb than the start and got an amazing bug slide as well, preserving a lot of speed going into the engine off section. He then zoomed towards the ending and finished strong with a great last turn. Dark's 51.94 was a very tough run to go up against, and for the next few days I decided to put track 19 on the back burner, as I was focusing more on playing other tracks at the time. But my interest in the map was piqued again when Bird, one of my viewers, had discovered a crazy new potential shortcut on the map, the engine off skip. I mean... but wait! Oh, but isn't this actually so good? Up until this point, we'd been driving over the engine off block in the middle section of the map, then slowly rolling our way up towards the next checkpoint, where the engine would be turned back on. Bird's idea was to avoid crossing the engine off block with a crazy bounce, so your engine would still be on for the long straight and the uphill, temporarily losing you a lot of time, but maybe gaining it back with additional speed towards the ending. The bounce looked ridiculous, but I knew that as crazy as it looked, the engine off skip was my chance to reclaim the 19 record. So I once again went back to the track and got to work. In my very first attempt on the new shortcut, I got it near perfectly, though I was over 6 seconds behind at that point, but if that wasn't enough, I had it good on my second attempt as well. With those initial attempts, we were able to determine that Bird's shortcut idea, done well, could save upwards of 1.5 seconds, and the race was on to become the first person to complete it. Eventually, I decided not to go for the bug slide anymore, so I could get even more consistent and get as many attempts at the bounce as possible. After playing for over 4 hours that night, it was getting late, but still feeling confident and not wanting to let the opportunity go, I kept pushing on to do just a few more attempts, and that is when this run happened. That's a run. That's a run. That's a run, boys. Wow. Oh, that's beautiful. 51.13. I'd finally gotten the 19 record back, and with a huge improvement, beating out Dark's old record by almost a second. I was feeling very relieved, happy, and ready to finally get some sleep. But before I went off, we were just going to do one final record comparison, when we noticed that a lot of the top records on the track had disappeared, including Dark's old record. Other players were telling me that they couldn't see my record either, but I didn't think too much of it, and I went to sleep. The next morning when I woke up and checked the game, my record was completely gone, as if it had never happened, and the new world record on the track was now a 52.7 by Hellpunk, almost 2 seconds slower than the time I'd set just hours ago. It took a while for us to figure out what had happened, but that night there was an update to Trackmania, wherein they tried to improve the anti-cheat system to detect more illegitimate records. But the system wasn't perfectly fine-tuned, and it detected my 51.13 that was driven legitimately on stream as cheated, and the record was removed from the leaderboards. I waited for the next few days to see if the record would be somehow reinstated, but after waiting for a full week with no new updates from the devs, I decided to take matters into my own hands and return to track 19 once again. This time though, I knew I wouldn't be happy with a run slower than the one I had, and the only part left to improve massively on was the bug slide. So I started doing attempts going for all 3 tricks, hoping to get a miracle run where everything worked as planned. But the odds were slim. I did some rough calculations on my consistency, where I assumed that if I could get the start wall climb half the time, and the bug slide half the time as well, and a ballpark number that my chance of getting the bounce was maybe 1 in 20 tries, the overall chance of me getting a run with all 3 tricks combined was 1.25%, or around 1 in 80 attempts. And that's not accounting for other things that could go wrong, like crashing in the zigzag parts or choking. Whatever the actual probability was, it was a hard task, and it was definitely unlikely to happen. But I was fired up and motivated to reclaim my deleted record and prove my innocence. And I was getting so close. I stayed calm under pressure. I don't falter and make a dumb mistake when I'm on world record pace, so whenever chat says pull a virtual, what they're really saying is perform under pressure. So yeah, if you didn't know, now you know, Simon. You'll see it a lot here. Okay. Alright, we're done. We're so done. Yeah, Nadio, so about that record, huh? Please don't delete this one. It's legit. I repeat, it is legit. I drove it on stream. I'll send you the replay. Let it stay. I can't improve this. 50.55. I hadn't just reclaimed my world record. I'd completely smashed it, going nearly 0.6 of a second faster due to having a decent start, a decent bug slide, and a great ending. This run overall felt solid, and I found it hard to believe that anyone was going to beat it, but little did I know, it wouldn't even stand for 24 hours. You see, just a few days prior, Hefest, one of the best Trackmania world record hunters in previous games, had started going on an absolute tear through the summer 2020 campaign, getting world record after world record, destroying everything in his path. And the next track on his hit list was track 19. After playing it for just a few hours, Hefest managed to set a time of 50.42, beating my record by 0.13 of a second. I was quite bummed out about losing my record so soon, but the comparison between our runs showed that there was still a lot of room for improvement. Hefest gained a lot of time on me in the bug slide, where I gained a lot of time on him again in the bounce. If someone had a run where everything went perfectly, then I thought maybe the 50-second barrier could be broken, and a 49.9 second time could be achieved. Anyhow, I knew I wasn't done yet, and I was not going to lose my record to Hefest without a fight. So once again, I booted up track 19 and started hunting. This time I was playing off stream. I needed to use every part of my focus on all the small details that make up a run, and I didn't want to get distracted or falter under the pressure. And the approach was working out. My runs were somehow faster than ever, and I would often be far in front before the engine off skip, sometimes even getting checkpoints under 30 seconds, which was very fast. Then, just one day after Hefest beat me, a tiny miracle happened. I started driving a run where on the first wall climb, I got incredibly lucky, landing on the road border and getting a push that propelled me forwards. And right out the gate, I was already far ahead. It was the fastest start I'd ever had on the map. My following bug slide wasn't ideal, but it was more than good enough with the lead I had. But sadly, when I went for the bounce, I immediately saw that I had messed up the setup, steering to the right just a tad early, but enough to throw me off the perfect line. I didn't hit the box in the correct way, and because of that, my car had a way wrong nose angle when it hit the wall. In that moment, I thought there was no way that this would possibly bounce back to the road. But the car kept spinning, and somehow rotated perfectly for the back to bounce on the top ledge, pushing me towards the road. And somehow, as scuffed as the landing angle looked, it worked out as well. It took me a moment to realize I'd actually survived that sequence, and all of a sudden I was now marching down the road towards the end, on world record pace. I gathered myself as best as possible, and while my last turn was far from ideal, I held the lead, and I finished with a time of 50.30, a new world record. I couldn't understand how that run worked out, but it did, and for the time being, the 19 record was once again mine. But things were about to change quickly. A few days later, Hefest answered back with an absolute bomb of a run. He had done the near impossible, and my dream of holding the 19 record would be shattered. Hefest had broken the 50-second barrier. The run was honestly pristine. When I first saw it, I was at a loss for words, and I knew that beating it would be close to impossible. Hefest got every part of the track down to near perfection, and beat my record by 0.4 of a second. It felt like there was nothing left to do except say GG and give up. But before giving up, I decided I'd sleep on it and make up my mind if I would continue the grind in the following morning. That night though, I didn't get much sleep. My mind was racing, and I kept thinking about track 19. One thing I couldn't quite shake about Hefest's run was how much speed he'd kept after the engine off skip. Going into the last section, Hefest had 377 speed, whereas I in my PB only had 368 speed. I was examining the track and thinking if there was anything you could do with that amount of speed on the last jump. At first I thought maybe you could jump to the left and skip the last turn. But that wouldn't really work. The road was too far away, and even if you somehow reached it, the tires still had ice on them, making the landing unmanageable. Then I thought maybe you could jump and land in the bug slide to the left, but the turn was too far away for that. Or was it? Because right then it hit me. An idea so clever that it sent shivers down my spine. An idea that would maybe make it possible to bug slide through the last turn. I immediately got out of bed and went to my computer to try it out, and what I'd thought of was this. Bug sliding the end could realistically be faster, but the problem was that you need to get in range to do it through the turn. And in order to do that, my idea was to spin the car 180 degrees on the last jump and land backwards, then drive backwards up the hill to get in range, wait for the perfect moment, and bug slide. Sure enough, the idea worked. I'd just discovered a brand new trick on 19 after being so close to giving up just a few hours earlier. After testing the trick for a while, I estimated that the 180 bug slide combo could save about 3 to 0.4 of a second in the ending, and I could get it about 1 every 3 attempts. Adding a 1 in 3 probability to the end of a 1 in 80 probability run wasn't exactly a great feeling, but the time gain meant that I only had to match my 50.30 run in terms of pace in order to beat Hefest. And if I was ever going to reclaim the 19 record, this trick was now how I'd have to do it. Then, on the 26th of July at 2 AM, I started driving a run. Things started off good for me with a fast wall climb, and I landed with really good speed. So good speed in fact that I had to steer sharply to avoid hitting the wall, costing me a bit of speed. The zigzag section afterward was good, and I cleared all the turns at full speed. The bug slide setup was close to perfect, and I went into the slide at the earliest possible moment. Then, I got an otherworldly bounce, keeping around 200 speed as I passed the narrowed road, which is the highest that I've ever seen. At this point, I knew that this run was not just fast. It was faster than Hefest's 49.92. It was the fastest run that's ever been driven up until the last turn of 19. And now, all I had to do was clutch the ending. 49.243. This run blew away all my expectations. Going into it, I had thought that Hefest's 49.92 wasn't beatable without the new trick, but the trick only saved me 0.4 of a second, and the rest of the time difference I'd gained in other parts of the map. The bounce I had in the middle was the fastest one ever, and when I had the chance, I kept my calm in the ending and brought it home with the new trick. I was incredibly happy and relieved with this record, after struggling so much with my motivation to keep hunting. This was the payoff for all the hours I'd put into it. The new trick, combined with everything else on track 19, made it very daunting for new players to go up against. My record stood as the world record for 2 weeks straight, and things went quiet on the map for a while. Hefest had moved on to competing for other world records in the campaign, and it seemed like no one else was going to contest it. For the first time, I felt like I might be able to keep the record, but that was a false sense of security, because once Hefest had set the world records on track 4, 8, 9, 12, 20 and 23 consecutively, 19 was once again in his sights. And sure enough, he took it back. 49.16. Once again beating my record, this time by 0.08 of a second. The comparison showed that he had a much faster start than me, while as expected, my bounce was better. Going into the ending, I was ahead of Hefest, but he himself had a new trick up his sleeve. Instead of going backwards like I did, Hefest jumped and turned his car about 110 degrees to the left, went up the hill sideways, and then quickly snapped into the 90-degree sideways angle and bug slid through the final turn, overtaking me just before the finish. Hefest's end approach was something I'd completely overlooked, being so caught up in my backwards idea. When I saw it done, it immediately made sense why it was faster, as you can take a much shorter line towards the finish. His record was crushing. It seemed like everything I could do in Trackmania, Hefest could do a little better. I was down to 0 world records in the game, and it felt hopeless to try to take them back. The 49.24 run I had already felt so absolute. It had taken an immense amount of effort to get it, and now to do it all again only to go a few hundreds faster felt pointless. So I gave up. I stopped playing the track. Several weeks go by and I get caught up in other projects, when suddenly the campaign is drawing to a close. There was just 1 week left until the 1st of October, where the leaderboards on all the tracks would be locked forever. As the deadline was getting closer, it started bothering me that despite trying so hard early in the season, I still hadn't completed my goal of holding at least 1 world record. With just a few days remaining, I decided to do one last-ditch effort to see if I could get a record to my name. On the 28th of September, 3 days before the season ended, I returned to the campaign. Skimming through looking for a track to play, my eyes were drawn to an old friend, track 19. I hadn't played the track for 2 months now, and my muscle memory was completely gone. It took me a little while to adjust, but soon enough I was able to get fast starts and bug slides, and I also learned Hefest's end approach fairly quickly. The only remaining puzzle to me was the engine off bounce, because while we had an age-old setup for it, it often resulted in awkward and hard to control landings. I knew that I had to get more consistent at the bounce, so in one of my failed runs, I sat down and respawned for almost 10 minutes, constantly trying the bounce over and over again to see if I could understand it better. And it turns out that looking at a problem with a clear mind has its benefits, because this time I noticed one tiny detail that was overlooked when the bounce setup was first found. This detail not only made the bounce more consistent and the landings easier, but it was even faster. The one small change that fully broke track 19 was the air brake. Air braking is a mechanic in Trackmania where when your car is in the air, you can tap brake and the car's rotation will lock in place. It is very useful for stabilizing your car in all kinds of situations. I was wondering why we hadn't used it yet on 19, as it seemed like it could obviously help with the landings, but I quickly discovered that most air brake timings resulted in locking the car in a very awkward rotation. However, if you air braked at the exact moment when the nose of the car hit the wall, your rotation would be perfectly flat. And to add to that, the car would be pushed further back from the wall, sometimes almost landing at the middle line of the track, making it much easier to make it past the narrowed road. It was a discovery I couldn't even dream of, and it would make reclaiming the 19 record a genuine possibility. I knew that reclaiming the 19 record was now just a matter of time, but time was something I didn't have a lot of. The campaign leaderboards would close in just 3 days, and I could not waste a moment. I immediately started hunting the track again, and quickly got some promising attempts. Somehow, something in me felt different. When I started grinding 19 again, things just worked, and I was consistently getting good starts and good bounces. Suddenly, I went from having no attempts at all the day before to now having plenty of decent runs. But then, all of a sudden, I had a shot at the record. A run with a solid start, followed by a great bug slide and a near perfect bounce. I toggled my PB Ghost on to see that it was nowhere in sight, and my heartbeat started rising. This was the moment I'd waited for. This was it. As I went towards the final jump, my hands were trembling, but I tried to keep calm and focus on the inputs that I had to do. I was just one turn away from achieving my goal, but I couldn't handle the pressure, and the bug slide went straight into the inner corner, and my PB overtook me just before the finish line, resulting in a disappointing 49.43. This run was heartbreaking. It felt like I had choked perhaps the only opportunity I'd get at reclaiming the record, and time was running out. Whenever you chase a goal in life, you will always risk failure. There's a chance that despite you trying your best and being good enough to achieve your goal, you fail. And after I failed, I was considering giving up, as it felt like the more I pushed for the world record, the more disappointed I would be if I didn't get it in time. But having said that, I also knew I could get it. I knew I could achieve my goal, and there was still time left. But continuing to play meant risking an even greater feeling of failure if I didn't get the record. But after all, risking failure is what it takes to succeed. So I kept playing. I stayed true to my goal and decided to give it all in the remaining hours. And at 9:12 PM that night, with 40 hours to spare before the campaign ended, it was finally all coming together. So it's currently 21:13 on the 29th of December, one day before the end of the campaign, and I just got this run. What on earth is happening? I am so happy right now. Let's go, boys. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how I got a dream world record in Trackmania, 49.065. This run had everything I could hope for, all the tricks nailed down near perfectly, and the final time ended up being just over 5 seconds faster than my time on release day. As we counted down the final seconds of the campaign, my record had survived the remaining 40 hours, and it's now locked in the top spot for as long as the game will be around. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, then please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out and it lets you stay up to date with when more of my videos are coming out. That's all for now, guys. Peace out.